Hi biologists, we're back with another video. This week we're going to be learning about some of the properties of water and why this is something that is essential to know in order to understand how life on Earth works. So I want to start with a question for you. What do you think is happening in this picture? Can you explain why this is happening? And so what I see are some water striders, and they are right on the surface of the water. And you can see that where their bodies touch the water, there's a little, gosh, it almost looks like a little indent. Why aren't they sinking? Maybe we can come back to that at the end and see if you can answer that question. So we're going to start by just acknowledging that life began in the water and it's dependent on water. We can't live without it. And as you may or may not know, when life on Earth first began about 3 billion years ago, it happened in the water. And because of that, everything that's alive on planet Earth needs water to survive. I'm going to say just about everything, but the vast majority of life on Earth needs water to survive. And the reason that water is able to support life is because it has these unique properties that other compounds or other chemicals in the universe don't have. And we're going to talk a bit about two of them in a lot of detail in the weeks to come. And these two properties are called polarity and it's also its ability to form hydrogen bonds. Don't worry if those words are freaking you out right now. We're going to break them down for you so that you can understand them better. So these are the 4 properties of water that we're going to spend a lot of time thinking about. Water can participate in cohesion, sticking together, adhesion, sticking to other things. It can moderate temperatures, it can dissolve substances, and ice floats when it's frozen, which is really different than what happens in other chemicals when they're in solid form. So we're going to start with a poem that I still use every time I'm trying to think of the 4 properties of water. And so we're going to break this down. So here's our poem. Sticky wicky, not so hot, floats when frozen, dissolves a lot. My advice to you is to memorize this poem because it's really going to be super helpful. Sticky wicky, not so hot, floats when frozen, dissolves a lot. Okay, we'll come back to the poem. I just wanted to address that first word we were talking about, and that is hydrogen bonding. And so last class, you probably got a sense of what an atom looks like. It has it has protons and neutrons in the center of it, and then outside of that atom, there's electrons. And those electrons are able to interact with the electrons of other atoms, and they can combine to make a compound. When they combine to make a compound, sometimes that means that a compound has a different charge on one end versus the other because of the way the electrons get distributed when they combine. And so you probably have come across something that's polar before. You may have come across a battery. Have you ever noticed it has a positive and a negative end? Or you may have come across a magnet, which also has a positive and a negative end. So when we're saying that water is a polar molecule, we're not saying that it comes from the North Pole or the South Pole. What we're saying is that it has 2 different distinct ends, just like planet Earth has a north and a south pole, which are distinct from each other, just like your battery has a negative and a positive end. So what that means, because one end is positive and one end is negative, that water acts just like a magnet. And this little place where they connect, where the negative end of one water molecule kind of sticks to the positive end of another molecule, makes water act like a magnet, and it gives it all of these really cool features that we're going to be talking about. So if we notice here, we've got this positive end of the water molecule, which is then sharing or is attracting the opposite pole of the other water molecules. And so you know that saying, opposites attract? That's what happens when a magnet sticks together. Same thing happens with water molecules. Okay, so here, remember our poem, Sticky Wicky, not so hot, floats when frozen, dissolves a lot. Here's our Sticky Wicky. So water is sticky. It sticks to each other, or sorry, each of the water molecules themselves will stick to each other, and they stick to other things. So when the molecule is sticking to each other, the different molecules in a drop of water are sticking to each other, we call that cohesion. When it sticks to something else, we call it adhesion. And so if water didn't have this property, trees wouldn't be able to take water up to their leaves. And because water sticks to each other, the molecules stick to each other, and they're able to stick to the inside of the tree's cells through these like water conducting areas of the tree, it can actually climb up the tree. And you've probably experienced this if you've ever worn pants that are just a little bit too long for you on a wet day in winter in Seattle, because your pants will get wet and then the water starts climbing up your leg. The other thing that happens is it creates this high surface tension. So because water molecules are sticking together, it's really hard to break through the surface of water, which is what allows our water strider to walk on water. Pretty amazing, right? Okay, Sticky Wicky, not so hot. So the other thing that's interesting about water is it doesn't get as hot as other as other compounds would in the same position. So it doesn't need a lot of energy to warm it up or to cool it down, which is great because it provides a stable habitat for all of us to live in. So oceans and lakes are able to absorb some heat, and it helps keep temperatures on the planet that remain within limits that permit life. It also allows animals and other organisms like plants to use evaporation. So something like sweating or sweating or panting, because in panting, we're dispelling water droplets that are happening inside our bodies and getting rid of them to cool us off. And just the process of evaporation actually creates a cooling sensation on your skin. And you probably have noticed this if you've ever used acetone to take off your nail polish. It feels a little bit cold. That's because it evaporates even faster than water does. But because water does it a little bit more slowly, it helps keep us cool. Okay, Sticky Wicky, not so hot, floats when frozen. So here's the thing with water. So when most liquids freeze, the molecules move closer together. So that means that the solid form of that chemical is denser than the liquid form. But here's the thing with water is they move apart as they freeze. So ice is less dense and it floats on top of water. And you've probably seen it expand if you've ever like tried to put your LaCroix in the freezer because it was too warm and you thought, oh, I'll come back to that in a second. And then you forget about it and you go back and your can has like expanded or sometimes even exploded in your freezer. Wait, was that just me? Maybe you've experienced that though, right? That water gets bigger when it's frozen, and you've seen that in your freezer, or maybe even if you have plant pots outside in the wintertime, or if you've ever experienced a pothole. You know, the water that creeps in during the rain gets frozen. When we get cold weather, it expands and it breaks up the terracotta pot or the road that you're driving on. The other thing that's great about this, though, is that it acts as an insulating blanket. So over lakes or even parts of the ocean that freeze over, that can prevent the entire body of water from freezing and actually provide a habitat for other animals to live in. Okay, Sticky Wicky, not so hot, floats when frozen, dissolves a lot. All right, we would not be alive without this feature because our bodies are essentially little sacks of water that are put together. And that water has dissolved a lot of stuff, a variety of substances that are necessary for life. And without water in our bodies, we wouldn't be able to do the chemical reactions that allow us to take in oxygen and turn it in and use it for making energy. We wouldn't be able to do any of the metabolic processes, any of the chemical reactions that help keep us alive without water. And so this is a super helpful feature of water. Okay. I just want to reiterate before we close out here that water balance matters. And so, if you think for a second about what a cell might be in your body, and you know that life on Earth is cell based, that's the building block of life. But if we think about each of those cells is essentially a little bag of dissolved chemicals or chemicals that have dissolved in water that are encased in a membrane. And we're going to talk more about what it means to be a selectively permeable membrane. But essentially, what that means is chemicals can get in and out of it and interact with that water. And so all of the cells in our body are bathed in tissue fluid, which is water that has salts and sugars and other things that are dissolved in water. And about 2/3 of the water in our bodies is actually inside cells. And more so, another point is, like, if we look at our entire body mass, like how much of our body is water, we would find that number to be somewhere between 60 and 70%, depending on the person. So water is really important to life, your life especially. So go drink a big glass of water, help your body stay hydrated, and we'll see it in class where we'll explore some of these properties of water soon.